Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 1,000 comedians and counting for nearly 50 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's the wonderful Pope Lonergan. Yeah!
Hello. Thank you for having me,
Hello,
Richard. It's an absolute honour. You're a legend in the comedy industry, so it's an honour to be speaking to you, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. You are too kind. All I have is a very funny, loud laugh, and I should get it insured. I really
Well, that's why we love you. That's why us comedians love you so much. You're kind of the
believe me. Thank you so much for being my guest today. The interview is going to last about 45 minutes to an hour.
Perfect.
And it's going to be all about your comedy career. So we're going to go right back to the start. And tell me, please, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
So, I was always a comedy aficionado. I know you get some comedians who kind of weren't really big comedy fans. They kind of drifted into it. They were naturally funny people who found themselves suddenly, becoming a comedian. I think the primary example of that is James Acaster spoke about going up to the Edinburgh Fringe for the first time. Didn't even know who kind of Daniel Kitson was. Which is, for people who are comedy aficionados, it's like a heresy, like not knowing who that is. And he just went up there and has become, one of the biggest comedy stars in the last 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But with me, no, I always loved comedy. I was always a really big fan of comedy. And at the back of my mind, I always knew that I wanted to make that transition into comedy at some point. And I know for my university dissertation and stuff, so I came to comedy a little bit later, but for my dissertation I wrote about comedians and interviewed lots of different comedians, and I realized that was my way of almost vicariously experiencing the comedy circuit without taking that plunge into actually getting up on fucking stage and doing it myself. Getting a lay of the land, speaking to other different comedians, people like Simon Munnery and Josie Long, I spoke to for my dissertation. I then eventually, my friend Michael, who I've known basically since I was born, both of us had always wanted to do it. He actually done a comedy course. I didn't do one.
Right.
But as part of the course, they had to sign up for, it was at the Cavendish Arms. I think that's a place where, it's a place where a lot of kind of contemporary comedians start out. Typical open mic gig, and it's always a bringer gig, so you usually got a full audience there, which is always good for the first time. Basically signed us both up. We both got on stage. It went, at the time it felt like it went well. It definitely went well enough for me to want to continue. But luckily there wasn't any video footage, because if I look back at it now, I would go like, what was that shit? You evolve and you progress and you get better and better. But at the time, it felt good enough for me not to be too dispirited to not want to continue. I did want to continue, but then the first two gigs were good. By the third gig, I bombed massively. It was a real kind of it kind of knocked me back down again. I got a sense of the extreme fluctuations involved in live comedy within the space of a week. It was 3 gigs over a week, and first two went through all the different kind of emotions. That was my thing. Sorry, a bit of a long-winded.
No, please. That was an excellent answer. So your first ever gig was in the Cavendish Arms?
Yes, yeah.
What sort of year was that?
So I keep getting. I tell you what, because I'm a what's known in medical parlance as a crackhead. I'm a junkie. My memory and my brain's like Swiss cheese, so my timelines are usually a little bit off. But I'm pretty sure that my first ever gig was October 2017.
Wow.
Or it might have been, it might have been October 2017. It may have been October 2016. I know it was definitely in October, and it was definitely either 2016 or 2017. But
brilliant. And you mentioned James Acaster. One of the things about my blog is that I don't only support major comic stars. I also support up and coming comedians, new talent. And there's a testimonials page on my blog with a lot of comedians saying very nice things about the blog and me. And James Acaster put, if I wasn't a comedian, I would happily sit next to Richard Gill all day and make him laugh. I mean, how wonderful!
Yeah. That's a lovely, that's a lovely testimonial, and
it's just wonderful. I would love to get him on here. It's been extraordinary the amount of comedians I've got. The podcast took off. The first one was Darren Walsh, and we've had everybody on. We've had Joe Caulfield, we've had Al Murray. The biggest coup, I was probably the last person to interview Barry Cryer, God bless him.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was incredible. It really was. It was such a coup to get.
Well, that's why it's such an honor to be asked, because looking back at the podcast episode, it is a real who's who. And you feel automatically like you're part of that comedy lineage, which is always really lovely for for comedians, especially up and coming comedians like myself, to feel part of that tableau. That historic UK comedy tableau is.
It's very kind of you to say, because as I say, I do support everybody. I mean, it goes the blog goes right back to the 70s. The first comedian I ever saw with my mum and dad was Les Dawson on Holiday.
Oh, wow.
And he was incredible in the 70s. And then a year later, I saw Tommy Cooper, and I got the bug for it. And I thought I'll do an enormous spreadsheet of every single act I've ever seen at every venue.
Yeah,
and it's just took off. I think the uniqueness as well is that it's from an audience point of view. And I don't think anybody could have the time to do it or be bothered to do it. And I just thought, right, I've got something here. Originally, it was a book that it might well still be a book, but at the time I couldn't afford the publishing fees.
Yeah.
So I turned it into a blog. And of course, a blog is an everlasting thing. So at the end of the day, you've got an archive, and it's such a passionate, positive thing, making people laugh. So thank you so much, and I hope I generate the warmth and the enthusiasm for it. Anyway, enough about me.
No, that was beautiful, Richard. Actually, I think people feed off of your you've obviously got this infectious nature, and you're like a comedy, and I say this in the nicest way possible, comedy obsessive. But I love that. What comes with that obsessiveness, which I have as well, is the unbridled enthusiasm for the thing you're recording and documenting, and that
great.
I mean, it's such a great thing. It's very you pick up on that energy, which is really nice. And that's
welcome, my friend. Let's move on. When you're on stage, what do you like to talk about? Do you have any specific themes? You're a brilliant NHS man, aren't you? That's your background.
Yeah, well, I worked for over a decade as a care worker, so it's like NHS. It's, thank you, mate. Cheers. So it's like NHS, like subsidised, but it's usually, the way social care is, it's actually in private hands and stuff. But I worked in that for a long time, and I did describe myself as a kind of hyper confessional comedian. I do have a sort of predilection for dark subject matter. I do really enjoy, talking about the sort of the darkest recesses of society and humanity. Stuff like being a drug addict, being working in care work, being around, the sort of the degraded physical but like biological self that you witness in care work and stuff. So I do have a fascination with the darker themes, but I like to yeah, I mean it's a hard, it can be a hard thing. It can be a bit of a tightrope walk because you don't want to alienate an audience. You want people to still have a good time and laugh at the stuff that you're making jokes about, but I try and do it in a way that's kind of affable and upbeat, and I've been described by the Guardian as I think it was like boisterous, or I think it was the word was boisterous. I try and do it in quite a casual, like laddie way on stage. That's my general like demeanor, but then you can kind of get away with transmitting some more like a dark comic sensibility under the cover of quite upbeat, affable persona on stage.
What is very good about you that I've noticed when I've watched you is that you're very warm with an audience.
Yeah.
So therefore, once you have passed the barrier of getting them on your side, you can talk to them about anything you like. And what's brilliant about you is that you're honest. It's very, very funny. There's always what's called toppers with jokes and stuff. The joke is always coming, but it's like the audience are drawn in by what you have to say because it's because of your honesty and like me, your enthusiasm on stage. It's wonderful to watch.
Oh, thank you, Richard. That's very kind. Yeah, I try to. I enjoy. I suppose people just they pick up on you having a good time on stage, and kind of I always try and anchor myself to the present and just think about sharing this space with these audience members and with these people, and kind of working through some kind of shit together. It's almost like a pathological honesty. Like it's something I think I picked up from my mum. My mum has always talked about the benefits of full disclosure, complete transparency. I remember once during a job interview, she said, when she gave birth to me, I was so big as a baby that when she gave birth, her vagina looked like an unrolled sleeping bag, and that was just and that was just her response to "Would you like a glass of water, madam?" But that was.
Your mum sounds wonderful.
Yeah, she's got that. It's that typical kind of. Like Essex girl archetype of being quite being quite flagrantly offensive and coarse, but in a way that's celebratory rather than
of course, yeah. But a bit like my dear mum, God bless her. My hometown's Carlisle, but I've been in London half my life, and it's wonderful to go back. But Mum and Dad have both passed on now, which is very sad, but I've still got a lot of good friends and stuff up there. So I do go up, and it's wonderful to go back. I'm going up for a time at Christmas. Tell me about your writing process for a routine or a show. Do you have a writing process?
So yeah, it's a bit weird. Like I was trying to think. So actually, I had to write a little bit about this. So do you know? Have you ever heard of Oliver Double?
He's been on here. He's been on here.
Yeah, Oliver. Yeah, he's great, and he's
lovely bloke.
Yeah, really. Like he again, like you, he's someone who's just got a real passion for comedy, and a real scholarly approach to comedy and stuff as well. And he's writing a book, and he spoke to me for it, and one of the things was about tell me about your writing process. I was trying to think. So I said, I think mine's pretty basic. It's like, I'll like
never.
yeah. First of all, I'll show you this because everyone always says to me, and this is something I take a lot of pride in. They say that I've got the best kind of comedy notebook that they've seen because my writing is so kind of immaculate. It's almost like my dad describes it as serial killer writing because it's so that's it. For the viewers.
That's incredible. That is so neat and accurate. You know where everything is.
Yeah, it's like it's so there's a real precision and obsessiveness to it, and so but with that like I scroll down bits. Whether it's ideas that come to me while I'm out and about, I then usually write that on like bits of collected ephemera like bus tickets or letters from the Department of Work and Pensions or whatever, like or even so I've got a whole drawer of these like bits of scrap paper with the messy on the fly notes, but then I transfer them over to my proper stand-up notebook, which is the one you've just seen, and I rewrite them in my obsessively neat handwriting.
Brilliant.
But then there is a kind of method to this. There is a reason for this, because during the process of transferring it from the scrap paper to the obsessively written serial killer handwriting notebook, it filters out some of the shitter ideas, because writing, it's like a form of quality control, because writing in that precision handwriting is quite time consuming, and it actually means that the worst ideas aren't even worth rewriting. So it's a good way to kind of filter out the and then at this point there's usually a loose premise or turn of phrase when it's in the notebook, or even a couple of bullet points to remind me of like a particular memory or anecdote. And then from that very loose, rudimentary kind of template or jumping off point or whatever, I then work it out on stage. I go on stage and I work through them.
What's brilliant, though, with the notebooks is that you've got a record of you as a comedian.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly it. And it's
so you could turn that into a book. You could that's your archive. It's like my blog. It's an archive for the state of British comedy at the minute, but for you in particular as you go on your comedy journey. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. I've always been. I have had a diary or a notebook or a journal of some sort since I was 7 years old. So I've actually got like a box of collected journals and notebooks and everything right from that young age. And as you said, it is a way to record your progress as a comedian. And
it's a book, definitely. It really is, my friend. The next question I think is the most difficult of the lot that I'm going to ask you. What do you think makes a good comedian? It's not a crap question, but
no, it's not. It's such a kind of it's such a broad question. It sort of it really helps you to kind of expand your thinking, because it's quite a hard thing to sort of distill down to a sentence or two. I'd say one of the traits I've noticed that every good comedian has something is, and I think it might have been the comedian called Martin Willis who I think he mentioned this, and it kind of always stuck in my memory because I was like, that does make sense. Every comedian, I think, has a certain amount of self-awareness. Like, I feel like every comedian has self-awareness, understands their place in the world, kind of understands what they're projecting outwards, like how they're being perceived in the public realm. And it's like, with like The Office, where the program The Office, like the Ricky Gervais one, a lot of the humor arises from the disjoint between David Brent's self-perception, and how he's actually seen by other people. I feel like good comedians always have a grasp on kind of who they are and what they're about and what people see when they're watching that comedian. But that's not really an answer. It isn't saying what exactly
it's a good comedian. Answer.
But thank you. Yeah, it's just saying like that's just one specific. There's obviously a lot more than that.
Yeah,
what makes a good comedian, but that's just one thing I've noticed that I don't think if that's lacking, I don't think you'd ever have a good comedian where that's lacking, where that is absent. I think every good comedian has a certain amount of self-awareness.
I totally agree. The reason why I asked the question is that years ago I had a go at stand-up myself. And I've told a lot of comics this story. I used to know a promoter. It was at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I said to him, I can remember all the jokes from the comedians that I've seen, and I can relay them in a pub. I think I could have a go at doing stand-up. And he said, right. He said, we've got an old folks gong show. Couldn't be worse. on a wet Wednesday afternoon in Edinburgh. Turn up. So I turned up with this script, and it was about me crashing cars in Carlisle because I'd just passed my driving test and I was just learning everything. It was very funny. And he said, this is brilliant. So I walked out. There was 3 people in the audience, all old men. And I walked out and I said, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can't see the resemblance myself. And of course, the joke is I am his double. And one old bloke at the back just went, fuck off! And I walked up to me on footsteps, and the promoter said, I'm another guy. I said, no, I think I'm best suited in the audience, but never speak ever again. So
well, it gives you a new sort of going behind the curtain and in front of the curtain. It gives you a more robust understanding of what we go through, and every comedian has had many of those experiences as well. And they're always the ones that we kind of the stories we tell backstage are always about the worst gigs, because it's no fun talking about the best gigs.
I think though, I mean I can't imagine you ever having a bad gig, but when you have the bad gigs, it makes you a better comedian to experience them. It's all about experience. My one go there. I know it's only once that I've done it, but it's all about experience. I believe. Do you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. I suppose like with a lot of things, you only get better the more you do it. It's like the Malcolm Gladwell, like 10,000 hours rule or whatever. You put 10,000 hours into something, and that's where you reach the kind of like point of optimization when it comes to whatever it is you're doing. But you learn to kind of switch gears. You learn not to be just one thing. You have to respond to the sort of the temperature of the room and stuff. So you learn to just to acknowledge the audience, I suppose, and acknowledge like when things are going awry. If you address that, it always makes it better. It makes it seem like you know what you're doing, because everyone likes stuff that's off the cuff, and obviously the art of stand-up comedy is making stuff that's very rehearsed and written seem impromptu. That is the whole thing. That is the whole barroom trick. That is the whole smoke and mirrors. That is the magic trick. But the moments where it actually is impromptu and ad-libbed and off the cuff are the most kind of beautiful moments in comedy, and because it can all go so wrong so quickly. So when you manage
do you have any particular memories of good or bad gigs?
So I don't know. So with good gigs, I've had loads of gigs where I've like come off and I felt like I felt indestructible. I felt like you quickly get a god complex, off of those gigs where everything, everyone's eating out the palm of your hand, But like there's no real fun to be had in like going, oh, look at this gig where I absolutely stormed, everyone thought I was brilliant, and I went home on cloud nine. And it's always the gigs. Like the gig, I had a gig where my stage was a buffet table and my fee was a bit of buffet. And like they're the gigs that are memorable. They're the gigs where they're the most kind of awful. The gigs where all the conditions are working against you. And it was as well like the gig was like for the Afro-Caribbean Blind Society. And it was like, why was I booked for this gig? Like there's just no shared frame of reference. Like I don't understand why I was put for that particular gig. I'm sure there's some comedians who would be who would excel in that space, but it was just a weird mismatch. But then I also have had gigs like it's not always the biggest, most momentous gigs that can be the best. I mean, obviously it feels very nice, going on stage to a theatre full of, like I think the most I've ever played is like 4,000. Is not,
That's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it's great. I loved it. Like it was a lot of fun and it went well. But I mean, but then I've also had a gig where it was literally 3 people at Brighton Fringe, which it could be bad, but if you're the sort of person who sees 3 people and thinks, do you know what, fuck this, I'm just gonna go into automatic pilot, they don't deserve me at my best, I'm just gonna get it over and done with and shoot off. But if you're professional and you're the sort of comedian who thinks, okay, these 3 people have actually made the effort to come to this, give these people a really fun, enjoyable experience,
Exactly.
Obviously switch gears, don't make it seem like you're performing at them, because that's a bit weird when there's only when the acts outnumber the audience, or but yeah. And we had one with Rob Mulholland and Andrew Nolan and myself. It was a Pope's Addiction Clinic. It's a show I do, a confessional kind of comedy show. And there was just 3 or 4 audience members at Brighton Fringe, but it felt really powerful. Like felt like we all really worked through something. And the people kept coming up to me throughout the weekend saying that was like one of the best live comedy experiences we've ever had. And it could it could have been so rubbish. Like
there's a story springs to mind, similar thing. I saw a comedian in a little tiny room once, and there was 4 people in.
Yeah. And
he bowled out full of enthusiasm, and he looked at the audience and went, hello. Oh, he said, right, that's fine. He said, I'll buy you all a drink for coming along. Thanks for coming along, but I'm not going to do it tonight. And a bloke in the front row literally had his arms folded and he went, no, I've paid my £6. I want the hour.
Yeah. Good on him.
And he had to perform it.
That's
you're
good.
Performing for those 4 people, and that was a lesson learned.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That I totally on the side of the geezer in the crowd there, because right. It's you just gotta you've just gotta give them some, give them a show, because they have paid.
They've taken their time to come and see you perform.
Exactly that, and you're never too big for any size audience. You always give them something, and leave them feeling happy and stuff. But
you're right, my friend. You're right.
But that was so. I'm sorry if I didn't really answer for. I suppose I did, like for bad gigs I've had.
You've answered everything brilliantly, and don't apologise. It's wonderful listening to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Thank you.
How do you cope with any nerves before you go on stage? Do you suffer from nerves at all?
Not so much anymore. I still get the butterflies. I get the slight flutter in my stomach, but I think that's manageable. I used to be like a manic, like sweaty mess, but that was I started comedy like when it was at the tail end of like my drink and drug taking days. Right. So there was overlap, with those, which isn't conducive to necessarily a good, healthy comedy career. But then once I knocked that on the head, I started I started sitting down on a stool on stage just to kind of like physically anchor myself.
You got a little prop as well with the stool.
Yeah. And I've kind of moved beyond that now, because I really like, I now my nerves are under control and they're manageable, and the physicality can kind of really, enhance a bit of material, and can kind of lend itself. So now I actually, I don't sit down on stage at all. But how do I handle it? I don't know really. I suppose I think Frank Skinner or someone like that has spoken before about like the comedy shit, and it's the going to the toilet. And there is, weirdly enough, like not just on the actual, the thing of it, like
we all need them.
Like not even just like the nerve stimulating your bowel and like making it so you have to go, but there's something like quite meditative. There's almost like like just sitting in a portaloo, in like a portaloo or a thingy, there's something there's almost like a, I can't think of the right word for it. Like sitting in that, it's almost like holy to it.
Enclosed space.
There's some kind of
sacred, getting your mind in gear for it.
Yeah, exactly that, exactly, and just a sort of moment of quiet and a moment of peace, and getting yourself ready to go out there and perform for the audience. But I always sort of pop out and have a look at everything in the audience beforehand, because I like to know. What I'm about to, what I'm about to confront. Like, I like to know I like to know like what's waiting out there for me. And
would you say that as soon as you walk out and you walk out across the room, as soon as you pick the microphone up and speak, the nerves go? Is that true?
I think it's as soon as you get your first laugh. So as soon as you get your first laugh, which obviously, you want to get as kind of as quick as possible. So you always have you always have like an opening, gag that's like the hit rate on it is very high. I think as soon as you get that laugh,
you're away.
It's smooth sailing.
The reason why I asked that question is, other than my blog, the most creative thing I ever did was write a play.
Oh, wow.
And we performed it for Comic Relief, and we got a lot of money and everything. The play is called The Applicant. It's basically about me, and it's basically about a bloke who comes down from Carlisle to London. He's got a very successful girlfriend, but he's never had a job in his life. He's never had an interview. Yeah. So each scene was the bloke sitting in the waiting room, very nervous, looking at the audience and chatting to them. And then my mates played all the interviewers, came on and did the interviews. So it was interview. And it got to the point where I was given my ideal job, and the whole place went bananas.
Yeah.
And then, but just as they gave me the ideal job, the interviewer killed me.
Oh.
It's all plot. There's a lot of plot in it. It's a comedy. But so the last scene was me at the gates of heaven or hell, or wherever you go, talking to God or whoever, and God saying, we've been watching you on planet Earth, and we think the ideal job for you is to interview corpses to go between heaven and hell. I shrugged my shoulders. That was the end of the play. It was 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Originally, I'd written it for the Edinburgh Fringe. I might bring it back again.
Yeah.
But it was so creative. However, we did 3 performances. And the first night, I'd written it. Don't forget, I'd written it, and we'd rehearsed it for 3 months. I ran out onto the stage, and I had to do this monologue to describe who I was and all the rest of it. And I forgot the fucking words.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I was like a rabbit in headlights going, Big Shop, Dad, Mum, Carlisle.
Oh, my God.
As soon as my mate come on, we were fine because we could bounce at each other. But and the best joke I wrote was his name. His name was Norman Oliver Hope. So it was with all the letters. It was Dear N.O. Hope. It was quite.
Oh yeah, that's really good. I like the sound. I love the sound of this play. You should revive it. Definitely.
I will. I think it's one of the things I'm going to do. And get it on at Edinburgh. However, good. Having said all that, I could imagine rehearsing a play and saying the words. Comedy is a lot different to that because you've got your script, but you've also got the audience and you can banter off them. You think that's true?
Yeah, because I think some of the things that people, the mistakes you make as an inchoate comedian, a comedian that's just, finding their voice and etc. A very green comedian is they have a bit of material that's very written. It is very, very written, and they feel that they have to say it word for word. And if they forget a word, they stumble, and the whole thing unravels, right? And the point with that is like being up on stage, it isn't supposed to be a recitation. It's not supposed to be as rehearsed as that. Even though we know like you are remembering a bit of material, etc. etc.
It's seamless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also it's something that's it almost it exists in concert with the audience. So like a bit of material can sorry, that's my dog Alan, I apologize.
Bring him in by all means.
Oh no, he's downstairs, but he's been okay. I'll wait for him. He should stop barking.
It's okay. Anyway, fine. Please carry on.
So the bit of material, so you as a comedian and the material exists in concert with the audience and with the audience response, right? It's almost dialogic rather than being a monologue, and their response can kind of feed into the development of the bit of material, or enhance certain parts, or like whatever it is. It's kind of like when people who are writing TV shows, like long form TV shows, say David Chase, who created The Sopranos, he's got a writer's room full of people. I've mentioned him, so I think he's the one who mentioned it. And then he says, you do the first series, and then kind of going by the audience's response to to certain plot lines, certain characters, or whatever. It kind of organically starts to change, and like more background characters might be moved to the foreground because there was such a good response from the audience, and all this kind of stuff. It's like that with your material, it's a lot more live.
You clearly know your stuff, my friend. You really do.
Oh, cheers. I'm waffling, yeah.
Let's move on to Edinburgh. I've been very fortunate for the last 16 years to make Edinburgh my holiday. Yeah. I go for a week. I take lots of friends with me from all over Britain. I do another spreadsheet of detailed shows I'm going to see, and I see about 50 shows in the week. I need another holiday by the time I come back. Yeah. But it's just the best experience to watch comedy in the arts and everything. Tell me about your first ever Edinburgh Fringe. Were you a punter? Were you an act? Did you start off doing 15 minutes and build up to a solo show? What was your experience like?
So yeah, I'm actually quite new to Edinburgh, really. Like I've only done, 2018 was my first Edinburgh. I went up there. I just did spots. Like I just jumped on different shows and just did like kind of spots all over the place, which was good. There's no responsibility. I didn't have to worry about bums in seats. I could just I could just jump on someone else's show and just do my stuff, and it was it was just a really fun experience. It is
amazing.
It didn't feel like it didn't feel like it felt more like a vacation, more like a holiday than anything else. The year after that, I did AAA with Bound and Gagged. I did their Underbelly show.
Right.
That felt more like okay, this is a job now. Like it felt more like each night the show was just something to overcome. Not because there was varying degrees of success with those shows. There was a late show. People didn't, the free comedians who are on, people don't know you are. They've just come to watch the final bit of comedy that's on for this evening within a certain vicinity, and they kind of come and they're usually a bit drunk and a bit whatever. So we had like 5 shows that were amazing, brilliant, wonderful audience. 5 shows that was like some of like the worst fucking shows we could ever imagine. and then kind of everything in between. And the room was boiling hot, overwhelmingly hot. And as Jerry Seinfeld says, with each like degree that the room, the temperature of the room actually goes up. These are things that people don't always take into consideration, especially people who put on comedy. With each degree that the room, the room heats up, you become like 20% funnier or 20% less funny or whatever. It really does, even though that's, it's not exact science or anything.
That's interesting, though.
Because
obviously you get more. It's not stress, but it's more concern the more hotter it gets. Yeah,
people just become preoccupied and uncomfortable, and you do need. I think because the whole kind of style of comedy gives the appearance of being quite loose, quite antic, and quite all over the place. People assume that the audience can match that energy, and that the audience don't really have to pay attention. Like some audience members, not
me there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they sort of don't. It sounds Ponzi say it's almost like saying they don't treat it with the respect that it's due.
I find that disgraceful.
Yeah, it's just
there to see you, not them.
Exactly, yeah, and like people, it hasn't got the formality and like the solemnity of like a play or whatever, and there's a certain social expectation when it comes to an environment like the theatre, like whatever big theatre place, national theatre. But whereas in a comedy,
no, please carry on.
In a comedy environment, it was the Peter, can't remember the name, he was a theatre director, he called it like the
Peter Hall.
No, was it maybe? Anyway,
Peter Hall, the director of the National Theatre.
It might, do you know what? It probably was. It might be. It might very well be. Yeah. And he was like a comedy a theorist as well when it came to dramaturgy and stuff like that. But he called it the rough space or the rough place or something like that. And he said there is a kind of different atmosphere to it and a different expectation. But then people do still need to focus and pay attention as well. And, otherwise they're going to miss stuff, or there's the whole thing's going to kind of come undone. But it's really hard trying to weigh up those things, trying to keep people in that space, because it should be fun and quite
very much so,
loose, but at the same time not too much.
It reminds me of the old Ken Dodd story, where he said he had Freud describing comedy, and he went on for about 10 minutes, this really elongated, long sentence about what comedy was and how wonderful comedy was. And he looked at the audience and he said, "Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Freud didn't play Glasgow Empire on a Friday night."
Yeah, exactly that. That's I've never heard that before, and that's a really good anecdote, because because like
infamously a bad audience.
Yeah, but it's just the two competing energies as well, and like because I'm someone who will be a bit artsy fartsy at like in normal conversation and like pontificate on like the the meaning of comedy in that. But it's good to just have someone as well, make it more grounded and earthy, and just go, you're just talking about your bollocks, mate. You're on stage talking about your bollocks. Like, stop talking about Freud and yeah.
Brilliant. Les Dawson was genius at that. He's got the famous a garden nighttime story where he said I walked down to the bottom of the garden and I looked up at the stars and the moon festooned in the beautiful, and all these great long words describing the night in about 10 minutes. And he said, and he said, I looked up and I thought to myself, by God, this outdoor toilet roof needs lagging.
And that's perfect. That's really good.
Tip off.
Yeah,
and they were both brilliant at doing that.
Yeah, do you know what? And that I love that. Just as like a comic device.
Yeah,
I think that's something that I
they
like.
were the best.
Yeah, I like that thing of like, of just kind of transitioning from a seriousness or an earnestness, and then transitioning to just totally a stupid puerile sting in the tail.
It's wonderful.
And it's almost like two competing parts of myself, of like the artsy fartsy Edinburgh Fringe Pope, and then like the punchy stand-up mode. You can't get away with
both.
both are great. Both are great, but puncturing gravitas, which is what Les Dawson has done with that thing, is just a really shrewd, brilliant comic device that I really like. I do it as well.
That's wonderful to have. Wonderful to have. Can you remember the two comedians who you did the AAA comedy show with?
Of course. It was. Oh God, I'm gonna.
Sorry, I'll put you on the spot.
No. Nicole Harris was one of them.
Oh, she's superb.
Yeah, I mean, she did. Yeah. I don't think she did a lick of material for the entire month, but she didn't need to.
And she's been on here. She's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and she's good. Just the people who like who really bought into what she was providing, which should be everyone because she's marvelous.
She's brilliant.
Such a likable personality. They absolutely loved her, and she could just get by on just. I don't think I've actually seen a comedian kind of just abandon material as flagrantly she had, but still absolutely storm a gig and get by on.
So good.
And the other one was Adam Riley, who's
he's brilliant as well.
Yeah, again,
right.
Oh, it was a great mix. I mean, you become like a little family. You kind of go through it all together, and it was a really nice mix because we were all very different. But we all kind of complemented each other as well.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And are you going in 2023? Are you writing a solo show?
Yeah, that's the plan. It was that was going to be the plan last year as well, but
the only two I didn't go.
Yeah, it's just the finances. Like I constantly talk about the how there is like a 2-tier system when it comes to performing at the Edinburgh Fringe, and the only way to actually get visibility, which is what you go up there for, you want to get visibility, you want to sell,
you want to get seen and known. I think that's why a lot of them go up there.
And really the only way there's this myth of like, oh, you can just be an unknown who gets discovered. Like, it doesn't happen. The people who get discovered at Edinburgh already go in with a lot of momentum, with a lot of financial backing in order to be able to pay for publicists, etc. And even the ones who maybe have built up like a grassroots following, you usually find they're with the biggest agents. They've got the most kind of connections in the industry. I don't think I've ever seen a case where an undiscovered act who really has nothing has suddenly come out of nowhere. So yeah, it's getting the money together. Like realistically, you cannot put on a debut hour that's gonna get you all the things you want from it, visibility, different meetings, getting your foot in the door with different opportunities. That's the word I was looking for. Realistically, you can't get that unless you're fronting up with 10 grand, like 10 bags. And that seems mental to a layman.
There, because I'm planning on going the middle week. And even if you're not performing, we'll have a beer in the Pleasance Courtyard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be up there in some capacity. I might just do Pope's Addiction Clinic like I did last year. Did it on the Free Fringe at the Banshees Labyrinth. It's got loads of foot traffic, that venue. So every night I was getting a good solid audience, and it was like the pressure was off because I wasn't eligible for any of the awards or any of that stuff, so I wasn't putting on a solo show. So I might just do that again. I might just.
Why not? And if that show's transferable, you can go to all the other festivals as well, because that's what I'm planning on trying to do next year. I know I'm going to Leicester. We always go to Hastings, go to Brighton, Edinburgh. Everywhere's opening up with either comedy nights or festival programs, which
exactly. Cool. That's what I usually try and do, the festival circuit as much as possible. And I did Pope's Addiction Clinic with Vault Festival in I think 2018 or 2019. Had sold out every night, like a really good run of it. So you can make good money if you're smart about it, So we
were talking before about other comedians. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Did you have comedy growing up?
Yeah, so I mean, great. Like right from the age of 4 years old, or 5 years old, when we wrote our first school essay. I say essay in the loosest term possible. It's like a school project. I did it around Rowan Atkinson because I loved him. Harry Hill. Wow. I loved went from when I was 7 years old. My dad was banging to Vic and Bob. So I had this kind of good comedy pedigree, but for me, Hans Taven, I love.
Brilliant.
Hans Taven's incredible. I know this is almost like he's considered like the zenith of what you can do with the creative possibilities of stand-up comedy. But Stuart Lee as well, obviously. Stuart Lee's been incredibly supportive of my career and stuff as well. So I've got all the love in the world for him. Also, like Richard Pryor, he was doing the confessional comedy thing, before anyway, and talk about dark subject matter. He done I think one of my favorite thing of his is, I think he had a character called Ragbone or something like that. He was basically like a crack addict, and he did this I swear 13-minute monologue that it was almost like theater. It wasn't even stand up, because it wasn't necessarily the funniest bit, but it was just the kind of the most captivating and spellbound. But
amazing. He was an extraordinary talent. No doubt about it. Very, very funny man. My the whole reason for the blog for me was Morecambe and Wise. They were the only ones in the 70s I never got to see. I'd love to have seen them. I've got all the books and everything behind me. I've got a load of biographies, comedy biographies. But I can remember aged about 4 sitting in the house at Christmas, and every one of the family crying at them. And I just thought, these two are hilarious. But I've seen everybody else, as I said at the start. I saw Les Dawson, Tommy Cooper, Ken Dodd, the two Ronnies in the 70s. And then I went up to my first Comedy Store bill in the 80s was Linda Smith, God bless her, Phil Jupiter, Steve Gribbin. And there was a headline act called Charles Fleischer, who went on to voice Roger Rabbit. He was never heard of.
Oh, really?
He was amazing.
Yeah.
But Bill Hicks, I've seen, who was incredible in Manchester. Frank Skinner, French and Saunders, all the big comedy boom. And then right now there's so many of them, which is wonderful. So it's so healthy. But you mentioned Harry Hill. I first saw Harry Hill 30 years ago downstairs at the King's Head.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And to this day has the best opening line of any comedian I've ever heard. He walked up, brushed past me, he was late. He walked up onto the stage and he went, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry I'm late. I had to have a testicle brought down," and got a laugh. And then he said, "From Derby." And when I met him 30 years later, I told him this story, and he went, "Oh, Rich," he said, I still use that line.
Yeah, it's really funny.
He is a classic example of someone who has become bigger, but has then gone back into the comedy clubs, which is wonderful. Yeah. And he's now, because he just loves doing it.
Yeah,
and there's so many of them like that.
He's like one of those acts, like the kind of mega, like mega famous act that I still like. Even at my level, I know that I could still be on a bill with him at some point. Like, it's not outside the realms of possibility. And I really want to be, like, I haven't had the opportunity yet, but because he was just in my earliest years, I remember when, like, my dad had his Christmas work due, and the Father Christmas gave me obviously. It was that the parents had bought the gifts beforehand, given it to the Father Christmas to give to the kids. But I got a VHS of Harry Hill. And I was like, for years, I kept thinking, how did he know though? And it wasn't until I was like 25 that I thought, oh, Mum and Dad fucking bought it and give it to him. But for years I thought, it is weird that he knew though, isn't it? Isn't it weird that he knew I loved Harry Hill?
Who doesn't love Harry Hill? I mean,
he's marvellous.
He is so good. Like me, do you go to comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Yeah, do you know what? I used to all the time, and I used to go to I always loved the work in progress shows. I always loved to see the comedians, trying out new stuff, and that always felt as close to the kind of the really authentic, grimy, debased live comedy experience I was always hoping for. I used to go to, like, Robin Ince used to use amazing.
Oh, it's brilliant.
He used to use Art is Dead nights at the it's in Angel. It's not at the Bill Murray. Bill Murray weren't there then. It was I think the Queen's Head in Angel, and he would bring on a load of different comedians and different, like, people within the industry or comedy adjacent or whatever. And so I discovered loads of acts, through that, through those nights that I wouldn't have necessarily been exposed to. And so I would always, my whole life was going to see live comedy. But since it's actually become like a job, like since it's actually become something where, like, the bulk of my income is earned through it, and I know the line, like some people say, it's a busman's holiday. It's not for me. I still can really love comedy, and when I'm at the Edinburgh Fringe, I will still make an effort to go and see as much as I can. But I don't go and see it as much because
If you're on a bill of acts, would you stay and watch them?
I do really try my best to. Yeah. It can be hard sometimes because of, like, just
maybe doubling up or to get home or whatever.
If logistically it's possible, I always do try to make an effort to see acts, because I do love watching other people perform, and I do love seeing.
There's something magical about it. Just sitting in a room, sitting down, thinking, right, make me laugh, and it's of the moment. You're never going to get it again with those people. It's extraordinary. Listen, my friend, this chat tonight has been a joy. Whenever I see your name on a bill, I always smile, because I know I'm always going to have a good time. And the amount of times I've seen you have made me laugh so much. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you again soon on stage.
Oh, thanks, Rich. That's really kind of you. And it's always a pleasure chatting to you, and it's been really nice kind of, having a bit more kind of an in-depth discussion like we've had
now. Yeah, it's been great.
I really appreciate it. So thanks so much, mate. I really
it's my pleasure. Where can people find you on social media? Have you got any podcasts, or are you writing or anything like that?
So I've got my book out, I'll Die After Bingo, with Penguin Books.
I've ordered that for Christmas.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. I hope you enjoy it. So I got that out. My podcast, Pope Lonergan, is Plimming and Lomping. I'm going to be bringing that back soon.
Brilliant.
And I've got, like, I'm gigging all over the shop. I was going to say about my Soho Theatre show, but I think by the time this comes out, that would have been and gone.
When is that?
It's February. It's at the end of February.
Time,
Gigging all over the shop. And you can find me on Twitter at Pope Lonergan. And I need to have more of an online kind of blueprint, footprint. I mean, because I need to do more stuff online. But yeah, the podcast, the book, and the book's going to be is going to be turned into a TV show.
That's fantastic!
That's a little.
That is fantastic. Is that going to be in 2023?
It might even be later than that. It's in the early stages.
I'm so pleased for you.
Cheers,
I'm so pleased for you, because I heard so many good things about the book. So congratulations to you. This has been wonderful, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you again live soon.
Lovely. Thanks, mate. And is it all right for me to jump off, Rich? Is that all right?
You take care. We are done, my friend. All the very best to you, and thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate. Speak soon. See you later.